Hi, I'm Anastasia Kate, and here are my top tips on working with craft resin. So first things first, let's talk about prep. You need to prep your tools, make sure everything is all clean, and your work and desk space is also very clean too. Once your items have poured, if there's any lumpy edges caused either by like gold leaf or flowers or anything that you've put in there, I personally like to sand it all down. I use like a light grit. Wet and dry is the easiest and really affordable and easy to get online or in your local shop. Then dust it down, make sure there's no dust or residue on it. You can use a little bit of water on there as well just to wipe away any of the sanding dust, and then just go over it with a lint-free cloth. So next we're going to talk about masking your items. We need to make sure that your items are masked properly just to avoid any overflow of resin when you're going in on your top layer or using multiple layers of resin in order to finish a product. So with thinner items such as like bookmarks and things with a thinner edge, I would suggest using a liquid latex just because it's easy to apply, it's quite fast drying depending on how thick you put it. That just protects the underneath of your product, and then when you go in on the top layer, if you do have any overflow, it is a godsend because then once it's all dry you can just peel it off completely. If you've got things with a thicker line, sort of like a coaster maybe with a thicker edge, I would recommend either using frog tape and just placing it around the edge line here just to make sure that again there's no overflow. Don't worry if there is any overflow, because if you put it seamlessly across and just run your fingers over that tape as well, it just means that any overflow doesn't seep underneath the tape, so you need to get it as finely to the line as possible. Now your items are all prepped, let's move on to talking about mixing and how to avoid air bubbles. Make sure the resin is mixed to the correct ratio as described on the box, whether that's a deep pour or whether it's a 1-to-1 ratio. When you're mixing, you just want to go really slowly, probably around 3 minutes mixing time. It can take a little bit longer depending on the temperature of your resin. I usually preheat my resin in lukewarm water, make sure the consistency is sort of like a clear honey sort of texture. If it's cloudy and you look down and you mix and it's gone all cloudy, sort of murky, keep mixing, but again don't panic, don't mix fast because that will generate the air bubbles. So you just kind of want to continually mix until you get to that honey-like texture. So now your resin's all mixed, we're then going to talk about the top layer. So go slow when pouring your top layer. Make sure that you can get it as close to the edges as possible. If it does drip over, don't worry about it because you've already masked around your items or underneath your items, depending on what method you've chosen to use. When you do finish pouring the top layer, I would suggest using a blowtorch just on top if needed, just to pop on any of those pesky little air bubbles that do come up. Another thing that you can use are cocktail sticks with the pointy edges. You can poke the air bubbles if they are big enough, but when using the blowtorch, make sure you don't get too close to your resin because you don't want to burn the resin. So now your top layer is all poured. Now it's to cover your items. So when I say cover your items, I mean dust sheets, anything just to cover them, because even though we can't see it with the naked eye, there are many dust components and lint floating around in your room, and they will sadly land in that resin if it's not covered. So that's all from me for today. I hope you've enjoyed the video and I hope you find these tips useful. If you do, let me know in the comments below. Thank you.